All right. Well, let's start with your why. And not necessarily, we'll talk about that ultra in a bit, but just in terms of just general, like doing HYROX and normal HYROX and whatever other sports you do. What's your why behind that? What's the motivation?
That's a good question. I think my biggest why is it just aligns with my personal values and the values of our gym community that we run down here in Kent. That being like health, fitness, strength, accessibility, and then obviously community. I think HYROX has built such a an amazing platform on the basis of all of those, and it's just a really good way to go and test the fitness, to do it around other like-minded people. The atmosphere, I mean, you know yourself, the atmosphere down there is just infectious, isn't it?
Hmm.
And I just love it. Every time I felt like after I did the first one, I was like, maybe this is like a one and done, might get bored after this. But every time I do it, I'm buzzing and I'm looking to book the next one. I'm looking where I can improve, whether that's on my running or whether that's on a particular station or trying a different category out. I just think it's just a really, really, really good um, event. It's just
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Has sport always been part of your life?
Yeah, I was always quite sporty at school. Played a lot of rugby, cricket. Um, Found the gym room pretty early, like 11, 12 when I was at school. Used to collect a lot of the muscle and fitness magazines. Don't know if you remember
Yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah.
Followed a lot of like bodybuilders. I like started in the kind of bodybuilding zone, like Steve Cook, Scott Herman, obviously the Arnie's and pumping iron and that. I used to love all that when I was younger. So found the gym, the weights room pretty early. Fell in love with it really. Carried on my rugby. I was never really good enough to play at a high standard, but I did as well as I could, playing for like county, school, and then I joined the Marines. So fitness was definitely very heavy from teenage years onwards. Um, and then after the Marines, I kind of went into more sort of private security work. And then I've always wanted to own my own gym. Obviously, COVID happened. We all know about that. And it was kind of my push to open up my own gyms, and I've been in a gym ever since, really.
Nice, nice. What made you want we've had a few Marines on the podcast actually. What made you want to go into the Marines?
Um, so when I was 19, a lot of my mates went to university. I decided that I didn't think university was going to be for me, so I started working as a quantity, as like an apprenticeship doing a quantity surveyor thing. And I just found myself in an office at 19 years of age, surrounded by older men. That it was just a bit boring, really.
Hmm.
So I thought initially I wanted a challenge. I wanted to go see the world. I wanted to do something pretty cool. And the Marines was the right thing. I knew a few people that were a couple of years ahead of me in school that did it. I watched a documentary called Commando on the Front Line, and that kind of all pulled me in. So yeah, what I was initially looking for was that challenge, but I think looking back on it now, what I was really looking for was a little bit of like belonging, a little bit. Um, Coming from like a team sports background of rugby and cricket, I've always been surrounded by like in like a high performing team or surrounded by others in like a team environment. So yeah, thinking about stuff now, it was more looking for that camaraderie, the belonging, and 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 kind of like pursuing a little bit of um, wanting to be better, like trying to better myself.
Hmm.
So yeah, I decided to do that when I was 19. It was probably the best decision I've ever made, I think.
How was how was like the selection process for that? Was that tough going through that?
Yeah, it was pretty tough. Being 19, I was still pretty young, still pretty green. I was, believe it or not, I was quite chubby back in the day playing rugby. So I found a lot of the running quite difficult, and there was a lot of body weight exercises like pull-ups, rope climbing, push-ups, a lot of that sort of stuff, carrying each other. So I found that hard to start with, but I mean they break everyone down and build everyone up together. So that was good. But yeah, selection. I mean, it's hard. It's 32 weeks of just getting absolutely beasted in the classroom, out on exercise, in the gym. Like it's quite relentless, really. But it
I,
was great. Enjoyed it.
I often ask people in here like what gets them through the tough times during a HYROX,
Mm.
but and maybe I'll ask that in a bit, but like even going through the Marines and the selection and the training sessions, you said like they're breaking you down. Like, what was the motivation through that to get you through those periods? Was there something in your head at that point?
I think when I was things have changed a bit now, but when I was that age, it was more the fear of like failure, not being good enough, and um, letting other people down, and probably letting myself down more than anyone else. But when it would get tough, I'd think about like what people would think about me back home, like my friends, my family. I guess that would make me really sort of dig in and make sure I wouldn't quit. I think when things get hard for me now, I've kind of stacked up evidence over the years, so I can just look back and know that everything that's hard these days has does have an end to it at some point.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Uh,
We I had Gareth Timmins on here who wrote Becoming the 0.1% about like the Marine selection and everything like that.
yeah,
And we spoke about like what separated um, those who made it in the Marines and who were successful, and those who didn't, who eventually dropped out, whether that be during selection or or later on. Um, do you if you think about those people, like do you notice any differences in your mind, like where they were, like the ones that dropped out versus the ones that made it?
well, that is a good question. Yeah, I think there. I think it. That I think some people just have that grit, like that relentless grit that whatever it is, they will just get through it. Especially like the physical stuff. I mean, going through training and selection, a lot of it was physical. So just being like you didn't have to be like I was never the fittest or the strongest, but I just knew that I wouldn't quit, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what they were looking for more than anything else. Like you didn't have to be the best runner, or you didn't have to be able to do the most pull-ups. Generally, those people quit quite early. You just had to just have the grit and determination. So I think that's the biggest thing that they were looking for. So yeah, back to your question, I think the grit and the determination, like some people have it, some people don't. I think it can be you can practice it and you can build the resilience over time. Um, but yeah, I think probably grit and determination more than anything else.
Okay. I think Gareth sort of said something along the same lines, and it wasn't the obviously masculine
Mm,
guys that were necessarily successful. If anything, like they didn't necessarily have that grit when it really came to it. It was more like, just more like typical type of guy that had it, and those like more masculine sort of butch sort of guys didn't necessarily.
yeah.
So yeah, yeah. How was the private security work? Was that after coming out of the Marines? Was that okay?
Yeah, it was good. It's kind of what most people fall into when they come out of the Marines. There's the sort of traveling the world aspect, meeting all these cool people. I mean, it's obviously good money, but again, you're you're kind of living out of a bag. Um, it's by that sort of time as well. I was kind of looking to settle down with my wife now, so going away every other week for a full week, it gets quite tough. And it's definitely like a young man's game, really.
Right, right.
But yeah, it's cool. I did some cool stuff, met some great people, went on private jets and helicopters. But yeah, I couldn't have done it forever, I don't think.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So let's talk about HYROX and most recent ultra HYROX that you did.
Yeah.
So let's start. Well, tell us what it was, and we'll go from there.
So it was we called it the ultra high rocks. It's basically instead of running the 1 kilometer intervals, we ran 10. The station stayed the same. So it ended up being 80 kilometers of running within the HYROX format. Um, it was kind of weird how it came about, really, because one of my members at our gym, she sent me an infographic off of Instagram that someone had made. I can't remember who made it now, but she said it was basically like this Ultra HYROX challenge, or the idea of it. And she said you should do this, and I sat on it for a while. I was like, yeah, that is. I'd done HYROX like a few times before that. I was like, oh, that is quite a cool idea, actually. And then I've kind of been searching for the best time to do it. And every November, I try to raise a bit of money for cancer charities, whatever that might be. And it was just the right time. And I reached out to HYROX. I said my idea when I wanted to do it around the November London event. And then it just all kind of fell in place. And I was like, oh, happening now. I've got to do it. So yeah. And then we kind of spent 6 months planning it and training for it. And then it was over very quickly, it seemed, which was strange because I spent so much time thinking about it and training for it, and it was
Yeah.
done in under 10 hours.
What like you said, I think you said you'd done some previous stuff, like previous sort of events.
Yeah.
What is there one particular like motivation behind it, like doing it for the cancer charities, and then also what have you done previously?
Yeah, so I lost a very good friend and family member in 2021 of like a rare cancer, and it happened really, really quickly. And he left behind like a family and kids and stuff. So every since then, every year I try to raise a little bit of money either for their foundation or for a cancer charity of some sort. So that was my kind of motivation behind it. Previously, I don't know if you've ever heard of the 4x4x48 challenge.
Oh yeah.
So basically running 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. So I've done that. We did as a team in my gym, we did like a marathon ski, marathon bike, marathon run. I think there was three or four of the coaches who did that together. So yeah, every year we kind of try and tie it into something like that. And I guess every year we do it, it escalates a little bit more.
so
And it just happened to be the right time to do that ultra high rocks.
okay. Uh, I'll ask you more about the ultra in a bit, but the 4x4x48 is a Goggins thing, I think, isn't it? It's like
So
yeah,
yeah,
4 miles every 4 hours, 48
yeah.
hours. What's the how was that? Was it is it like the sleep deprivation gets you? Does it with that?
Yeah, the funny thing with that is the volume isn't too much, doing the 4 miles at a time that is actually not too bad. It's the short recovery you have in between.
Mhm.
So you kind of don't really, you probably get by the time you've done the 4 miles, by the time you get home, had a shower, had some food, you've probably got like 3, maybe 2 hours to play with during the day. So when it gets to the night time, the recovery, it that 3 hour window gets very, very short. Like you'll fall asleep and then all of a sudden you're up again. Your body doesn't really get time to recover. So what I found was my like feet would swell up quite a lot. So I had to spend a lot of time like taping my toes up, um, trying to eat in that window as well was quite difficult, and trying to sleep. I'm not very good at once I've done something physical, it's very hard for me to like chill out and go to bed. Like especially after a big high rocks, I find that night quite difficult to sleep well. So that was quite tough, yeah. And also like running, getting up at ridiculous o'clock in the middle of the night to go running on your own around the country roads. It was quite tough.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
luckily, I mean, I pretty much did every 4 mile lap or loop of the village with someone from my gym. So there were people coming out on their bikes at like 2 a.m. to cycle along with me whilst I was running. So
Nice.
that was really, really helpful. Would have been a lot tougher if I'd have done all of them on my own, I think.
Yeah, yeah. That like you mentioned about like trying to sleep after a HYROX is I'm with you. Like we did we were off at like 8:30 the other night in London and then
Mm.
like trying to sleep after that is just impossible. It's
Yeah,
like the time you need to sleep most, like after a HYROX, is like the time that it's hardest to do it. It's terrible, but yeah.
yeah, really tough.
Um, so so the event, so the ultra itself. What was the hardest part of that? Was it presumably the running, or did the stations become insignificant at that point, or were they particularly hard?
Yeah, good question. The running, obviously, well, to start with, the first 10K I did, the track was really, really busy. And I didn't really anticipate that. And that I couldn't have obviously trained for that apart from doing more high roxes. But going at the speed I was, the track was really busy. So I found I was weaving in and out of people a lot. Only really in that first 10K. Um, and I was feeling quite fresh, so I think I probably wasted a bit of energy doing that on the first 10K. But then like you said, the stations actually became quite nice to do. A bit of a break from the running. I found like, I really enjoyed the Normally burpees they're pretty savage. But I actually really enjoyed myself through the burpees and found I got through to the end of it and I wasn't really that out of breath. After the burpees, that's when the mileage and the load really started playing on the legs. And I wouldn't recommend running around a building for 10 hours doing the same 500-meter loop. It's quite, I got to, I don't know if did you do the London event?
Yeah, yeah.
That piece of tape along the floor, splitting the fast and the slower lane up. And I literally just followed, had head down, just looked at the tape. So it was good. I mean, there was lots going on and lots of people to chat to, and like I had literally had support pretty much around every corner, which was fantastic. But every time I ran past the lunges, I was like, "That is going to hurt when I get to there." And that I did that for 7 hours, run around the track before I actually got to the lunges, and then picked up the bag, did the first step, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is excruciating." I don't think I've ever put myself in that much pain physically doing exercise. Honestly, it was excruciating. And every step was just like shut your eyes, just grimace in pain and just do one at a time. I don't know how long I'm not looked at my split times to see how long I was actually doing the lunges, but it was for a while. I know that. And I could just feel like my adductors in the inside of my legs just wanting to cramp up. Um, Luckily, there was a lot of support I had around me. Some of the marketing team from HYROX were there to help me as well. But once I got through the lunges, then it was just one more 10K and then the wall balls. Um, the wall balls was quite funny. I'd visualized the finish in the wall balls so much during the 6 months of training, and like, I've dreamt about it and everything. It's quite strange. So running in there was pretty surreal. It was still quite busy. And I went to do the first rep, and it's probably the slowest rep I've ever done in my life. Like my hips just didn't want to go down to full depth. Anyway, I got through the first rep, and then they seemed to flow a little bit after that, which was actually a lot. I thought I'd get to the wall balls and have to do them in singles maybe, but I was actually able to break them up into big chunks, which I was quite happy with. And then I threw up my last ball. I don't know if you've seen the video, but I tried to then start running again over the finish line, but my legs wouldn't move, and the ball came down and like hit me on the side of the shoulder and the neck. Luckily, I just kind of like styled it out and run over the finish line, but it would have been absolutely disastrous if it would have knocked me out or something, and I had to like all over the finish line. Um, and then when I got to the end, I didn't really know what to do. I didn't know whether to celebrate or like collapse to a heap on the floor. So I kind of just had a big sigh of relief, really, to say, like, oh, I've done it now.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
amazing. It's amazing. What was your time? What did you finish in?
I think I did it in, I think it was 9 hours, 49 minutes, and 40 something seconds.
Okay,
So I
nice.
was, I was aiming for a lot of people were asking me like how long do you think it's going to take you? And there was so many unknowns like I didn't really know, but I was saying between 9 and 10 hours would have been good. So I was pretty much bang on there really.
Amazing. Um, I just thought of it, but like you saying about that on the wall balls, I did that once. There was this sort of judge came over to sort of cheer me on and like motivate me, and I threw the last wall ball and then stopped to like thank him. before I left, and then the ball came down and smashed me on the head. But
I
yeah,
mean, yeah,
luckily I
I've seen
still,
it happen so many times as well, and yeah, it just had to happen to me on the last rep of the finish. Funny.
yeah. That when I initially heard about what you were doing, I was like, oh, the stations are insignificant. Like it's the 80K of running, but you're right about the lunges. Like by the time you get to lunges, you're 70K in at that point,
Yeah,
and doing 100 meters of lunges at 70K is nasty. So yeah, I can
yeah, yeah.
imagine. What was your
In training, I did like I can't tell you how many lunges I did, Bulgarian split squats, like every single leg exercise you could think of. I was hammering it and heavy as well. But there's nothing that could replicate running 70K and then going into 100 meters of lunges.
no, no? It's like, I mean, it's not like, but even with the wall balls, like people can do 100 unbroken wall balls fresh, for example, in training, but like at the end of a HYROX, it's a different kettle of fish, and that's
Yeah,
just at the end of a normal HYROX. So yeah, like 70K, 80K in is very different.
yeah.
What was your average running pace? Do you know?
Yeah, so I did like throughout my training, I kept to like a conversational pace of between like 5 minutes, 5 minute 30 Ks. So I knew that's what I wanted to run out, and I knew that I could run at that for an extended period. So I think I started off the first 40K at like running about 5:15s. And then it soon started to like decline a little bit. I think the last two 10Ks I was running at like 6.5 minute Ks. Kind of, I wouldn't really call it running either. It was more like shuffling everywhere.
And
Um,
how about lap counting, which is a problem for people doing 1K in
yeah.
HYROX? How did you go about that?
So we had a few different methods. Obviously, my chip it wasn't set up for the ultra HYROX. It was just set up for a normal HYROX. So the the board that comes around telling you what to go, mine always just said workout pretty much. So I set up I had a Garmin watch on. We set up that, so I was able to basically lap my kilometers, so I know what speed I was running at. So I had that, which was very helpful because I could just look at my watch and be like, oh, I've only been running for 2.5 minutes. I need to do another lap. I also had some pacing beads like on my hydration vest that I'd used previously in the military. So my thought behind that was if the battery or the watch dies, I can use this to count my laps. Luckily, I didn't have to use it, but it was there if I needed it. And then I had a support team of about 10 to 15 of my gym members. They were they were in the spectator area, but within the rock zone right by in between the ski ergs and the sled push. So every time I came round before the in gate, they would tally me off on the sheet, and they did that for 9 hours pretty much. So yeah, I don't know how they did it, but they were able to. I think they missed me once where I literally had to shout over and make sure that they see me. So they did that pretty much every time and called out how many laps that I'd done. We knew that we had to do 21 for the first one and then 20 after that. So it was just a bit of teamwork, really. And luckily, I wasn't running fast, so we were able to like give each other a wave and shout across how many laps I'd done.
Awesome. Did you did you run with anyone at any point? Like you mentioned, people from your gym. Were you going around with anyone at any point?
Yeah, a couple of people. A lot of my members were doing the event, so although most of them were running faster than I was able to run with them for little bits. I ran with a couple of mates towards the end on the last couple of 10K. Some of the HYROX team ran with me for 3K before the lunges, which was good. So we were having a good chat there, which took my mind off things. And then you know what the HYROX community likes, very friendly. So people were like running past me and asking me questions and chatting to me on the way round and saying well done. And we had a little chair set up in the rock zone, and every time I'd do 10K, I'd come in, give my hydration vest, go off, do the station, come back, have a little rest, quick jam sandwich and stuff, and a little sit down. And people were literally during their race running over to where I was sat down and like patting me on the back and saying keep going and stuff. So it was really cool.
Awesome. You mentioned that the jam sandwich. I was about to ask you about nutrition. What was
Yeah.
your? Did you have a plan around nutrition? Like what was that?
Yeah, I had quite a strict plan actually, especially I mean, it gets hot in there as well with all the bodies and inside the room. So I made sure that I was drinking 750 milliliters of water every hour with 1500 milligrams of sodium. So I had an electrolyte drink in my hydration vest. Every 20 minutes, I was consuming a 30-gram carb energy gel. And then every time that I'd come in after 10K, I'd eat a banana, I'd have a jam sandwich or like a Rice Krispie Squares bar, and then some salty peanuts when I needed them. But it became towards the end, it was very hard to keep on with the eating. I really found it hard to swallow, especially like jam sandwich. It came like quite claggy. So toward the last 2K was pretty much just energy gels, really.
Okay. What
Yeah.
did you, how did you decide upon the 750 milliliters per hour? Was that like something you've experimented with in training or what?
Yeah, so I used have you heard of precision nutrition?
Yeah.
Uh, so I went on there, and if you go on there, you can kind of like tailor a nutrition race plan. You just put in like what you're doing, how much you sweat, put in a few details, and then it tells you what it think you should use. So I did that, and then I was testing it through training, through my 10K loops I was doing around my village where I live. And I just found that it really worked for me. It sounds like a lot, but yeah, it really worked for me. And I was able to, I'd get to the end of my runs and be like, still feel like I had a lot of energy. I didn't, and I was also able to recover a little bit better between my my training. So I think the electrolytes were key really during training and during the race, and I was pretty strict on myself that every K I'd cut, every time I'd touch my watch and do a K, I'd have two big sips on my hydration vest. And I just made sure I was pretty routine at doing it.
Okay. How was your recovery afterwards? Was it did you feel terrible the next day?
I was sore, yeah. I was pretty sore. Like walking out of the Excel back to the car park, um, was pretty tough. I was pretty sore and tired. And then the first sort of week after it was bad DOMS really. Like my hips were absolute dust.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Like just even like rolling over in bed, I'd be like, but it was just all legs, and luckily, me and my family we went to Centre Parks a couple of days afterwards and had a bit of a chill out, and we did a bit of walking and cycling round. So it was probably the best. But yeah, I was pretty sore. I'm not going to lie.
Did you get yourself into the ice plunge in Centre Parks or
I
not?
did. Yeah, I
Did
did.
you?
Yeah, yeah, it was good. Needed.
um, has this experience uh, like impacted how you look at a normal HYROX in any way? And that might be like I don't know. Like I appreciate it is vastly different from a normal HYROX, but maybe on the nutrition side, the hydration, the electrolytes, the pacing, anything like that. Has it influenced like how you might approach a normal HYROX in the future?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's influenced not just how I'd approach a HYROX race, but any sort of physical challenge or event. Um, I got a coach for it. Big up John Clark, bending barbell. Um, he was my coach. Had very specific plan in place. We worked a lot on strength, which I would recommend to anyone listening to help improve their running. Strength played a big part of it. Um, and I think having that structure in place definitely allowed me to focus on the training rather than the end goal, which obviously helped me achieve it in the end. Um, and then and then concentrating on the nutrition and testing things out as well. I was always testing out different things during training, whether it was more water, less water, trying to eat in between running that I was doing to make sure that when I was eating during the event that it wasn't going to cause me any problems. The I also worked a lot on the pre race nutrition, so like carb loading a few days beforehand, which I'd never really experimented with before. And it is tough. Like I don't know if you've ever carb loaded a lot with a couple of days before an event, but it's really hard. Eat a lot. So I did that. So yeah, it's definitely taught me how to prepare for an event, no matter what sort of size. And being a coach myself as well is given me a lot of invaluable lessons that I can I can now pass on to other people.
Mhm. You touched on the training. What sort of mileage were you doing in training, like running mileage, were you doing in training the weeks leading up to it?
So we built it up. Like I'm not a huge runner. I really enjoy it now, but I wouldn't say I'm like an exceptional runner or anything. So we started off pretty low really, and then we built it up. We tried to make it as race specific as possible. So I've got a nice 10K loop that goes from my house. So I'd run 10K, come in, have the jam sandwich, resupply my running vest, go out again and just practice that. So in the weeks leading up to the ultra, I think I did like a 60 kilometer week. Then we had a bit of a deload week, and then we built it up again, and there was like 70, 80, 90, and then a deload week, and then we went into race week. So we got up to that volume, but within a week, before having a week off. The rest week beforehand, I found really tough. Um, I don't know about you, but I train probably 5, 6 days a week normally, and when I do have like various days of rest, I find I just get really stiff and
Mhm.
lethargic, and I don't really feel great. So that week leading up to the event, it was really hard to sit on my hands and not do any training. I mean, I was doing bits and bobs, but it wasn't as much as I was obviously used to.
Yeah, I know what you mean about like the taper week. All the
Yeah.
niggles appear and everything
Right.
appears, doesn't it?
And it plays on your brain a bit, doesn't it? It's like
Yeah,
you're not feeling your best, and you're like, oh. So yeah, that was tough, but it was probably well needed. Well needed.
I think it was Sinead Bent who broke the open world record at the event. I think it was her that referred to it as taper tantrums, like
Yeah.
your body throwing a taper tantrum. So yeah, um, uh, just to touch on the strength side of things in training as well, which you mentioned that you're doing. Is that just general strength, squats, deadlifts, that kind of thing, or was there anything specific that you felt helped with the running?
So yeah, a lot of squat, a lot of deadlift. I was using a trap bar deadlift instead of a normal straight bar. I just find that's better for me. I can use my hips a little bit more. We were doing a lot of single leg quad dominant exercises, single leg hip dominant exercises. Um, and there would be, I would also, so there was a lot of just strength days and then there was a lot of just running days. I didn't really mix the two up too much, apart from when I did like more HYROX specific sessions where there would be some like running with fatigue legs. Um, we also did a lot of like overhead strength because the idea being that when I got to the wall balls at the end, I was going to need my shoulders. So we did a lot of like strict um, pressing overhead. We started incorporating sets of wall balls before I actually did my strength work as well when we went overhead, which was quite interesting. But yeah, a lot of single leg strength work, heavy squats, but low reps, which I feel really complemented my running in between as well. Felt good when I went out for a run instead of doing loads of volume on the strength work and then feeling like sore going into the running.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you're in good shape now to like run a normal HYROX? Do you feel like you'd be ready for that, or is it like are you like so off the speed that you'd need or anything like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I actually went to see my osteopath yesterday for the first time since the event and just to check, see what the damage was. He said to me, your hips feel like they're bags of sand and your feet are all fucked up. But I actually feel pretty good. I have actually started training for, I'm hoping to get tickets for the Manchester event. Me and my friend Alex are hoping to do a sub 60. So we're going to test the speed out.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, that's I don't know yet. I don't know the answer to that question, but I will do if I get tickets for January.
Okay. All right. Nice. What's there's a few questions I often finish up with, but one of which is what's been your best sporting experience? Is it this or something else in your lifetime?
I've got two things that come to mind. One, when I was a lot younger, when I was 15, we my rugby team at school, we got to the end of the Daily Mail Cup, the final. We actually played at Twickenham, which was like an awesome experience at that age. We got to use the changing rooms. We ran out, and there was like one part of the stadium that was full of supporters. Played on the pitch um, for the game, and it was great. That was probably something I'll never ever forget that. And then yeah, secondly is probably the biggest thing that I've done physically is probably this Ultra HYROX challenge. Yeah.
Love it.
Um, yeah.
How about the toughest?
Well, I was thinking about this. Yes, that was tough. This isn't so much sporting, but I would say probably the toughest physical and mental challenge I've ever faced was the commando tests when I was going through training. So it's basically that at the end of your training, you have a week of these consecutive challenges, and they're all like very physical and mental. So day one, you've got an endurance course, which is like a 6 mile assault course through Woodbury Common, and you finish that with like a shooting test. The day after that, you've got a 9 mile speed march, and you do that in boots with kit with a rifle within your troop. Then you've got a Tarzan assault course, which is a bit more like short but sharp. I think it lasts like 10, 12 minutes of like a high ropes obstacle course, which is very, very gassy. And then you finish with your 30 miler across Dartmoor. So that week is pretty tough on the body, and you're that far ahead in training that the pressure of like failing and or getting injured is so like hard. So I'd probably say I know it's not sporting, but I'd probably say that's the biggest sort of physical mental challenge that I found the toughest.
Yeah, yeah. Um, how about like the best piece of advice someone's given you or you've discovered while training for HYROX?
Yeah,
And it could be a normal HYROX or it could be what you've just done. It's up
so
to you.
my coach actually sent. I've wrote it down. My coach he actually sent me this the day before the ultra, um, and I think, and I'll read it out to you in a minute because I think it's great. But what I was training for throughout the training for the ultra was like the actual race and the making sure I was hitting the right things I needed to in training. But what he reminded me of was like why I was doing it, the cause behind it. So it comes from, it's a part of a poem that comes from the proof of worth, and the part that he sent me was the test of a man is how much he will bear for a cause that he knows to be right. How long will he stand in the depths of despair? How much will he suffer and fight? So I read that and I was like, oh, makes the hairs on your neck stand up. So when I read it, and then when I was doing the actual ultra, I had that in the back of the mind, like, well, why are you doing this? What is the cause? And when it got tough, like in the lunges, I could shut my eyes and I could just think about that, and it would get me through.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that was probably the best piece of advice I had in the lead up, and it was a day before the event.
I love that. And I think that type of advice is particularly applicable for something like an ultra, like you said earlier. Like you can't really prepare for 100 meters of lunges when you're
Yeah,
70K in, there needs to be like this motivation over and above just like how you've prepared your body in training for it. So,
yeah,
yeah,
it's all mental, isn't it?
yeah, 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 yeah. And then finally, if you could plant like one idea or piece of advice in the mind of everyone listening, what would it be?
I mean, I think the main thing is, I mean, I run a couple of personal training gyms, and the one thing I say to most people is, a lot of people are worried about like the perfect time to start, and it could be anything like fitness related, booking your first HYROX, a project, a business, whatever it is. But everyone's always waiting for the perfect time. I don't think there ever is. So what I just say to people is like, just make a start on it. Doesn't matter how good it is, doesn't matter how good you are, how fit you are, if you're ready for HYROX or not, like just book it or just start, um, and then take it from there. And then once you do start, make sure you've got that relentless forward motion or movement, because you will get better at it. You will improve. You just need to keep trying and just make that start.
Awesome. Awesome. Love it. Do you want to give you a shout out to your gym?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, it's Brigade in Kent. We run two personal training gyms. So if anyone's ever around in Kent, find me on Instagram, Tom dot brigade or brigade dot fitness. Send us a message and come do some training.
Amazing. Are you still raising money for what you've done in the ultra?
Yeah, we've got a Just Giving page, which I believe is still live. So we've the goal was actually £5,000, and we broke that now. I think we're close to seven, which is amazing. Really, there's been some really nice donations from people I don't even know, which is pretty cool.
Okay, awesome. All right, well done. This has been brilliant. What you've done is brilliant. I love it, and yeah, hopefully talk to you again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Greg. Appreciate it.